Hi, my name is Debasish Biswas. I'm the CTO of Aware. And with me today is Courtney, who is the Chief Architect of Aware. And the topic of our presentation today is enhancing data ingestion and enrichment at Aware with Azure Cosmos DB. And let's take a quick look at the content today. We start with the business problem, then a quick view of the high-level system architecture, and we go into why we picked Cosmos. Then we go into the ingestion and enrichment architecture in detail, and then end with the lessons we learned in the process of this project. Now let's take a look at the business problem. In today's enterprises, digital conversations are everywhere. These are powered by the growth of platforms like Slack, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and many others. These are continuous sources of short form messages that contain business decisions, innovative ideas, embedded risk, and knowledge sharing. Aware set out to build a platform that collects all these messages and builds contextual intelligence on top and make it available and accessible to enterprise customers. Now let's see how we do that. Here's a quick view of the overall system architecture at a very high level, right? At the bottom of this slide, you see a tier which is called Aware Fusion, which consists of all the connectors that integrate with the end collaboration platforms like Zoom, Slack, Microsoft Teams, and continuously collects messages, categorizes them, and converts them to a canonical format before storing them in what we call intelligent data fabric. The middle tier, which we call Aware IQ, is the enrichment subsystem in this platform. It consists of the intelligent data fabric and an embedded AI/ML platform that hosts Aware's purpose-built ML models and selected generative AI models. These models process these messages further to detect sentiment, toxic speech, complex themes, sensitive data, OCR, password detection, and so on. And these inferences are used to enrich these messages to build context. And this context is exposed to business applications in security, compliance, legal, and employee listening. Now, at the heart of this platform is the intelligent data fabric. And the intelligent data fabric at its core has a data store that is powered by Cosmos. Now, let's look at why we picked Cosmos, right? It's a globally distributed, highly scalable, and high performance storage technology. It's fully managed, so the operational cost is low or lower, and it provides consistent read write performance. And more importantly, it also supports constant time reads. And of course, it is schemaless, giving us the flexibility of accommodating content from different kind of content from different collaboration platforms. Now, with this background, I want to encourage Craig to go on to the rest of the slides describing what is the architecture like and how do we use Cosmos to scale it, and of course, the lessons that we learn in the process. Go ahead, Craig.
Thanks, Debasish. One of the things we encountered as we were scaling our traditional solution was we were seeing an increase in latency for our ingestion pipeline. The growing size of our data set, alongside maintenance routines and workloads, were starting to add up. In order to address this bottleneck to our growth, we introduced Cosmos as a primary data store for our ingestion pipeline. We moved to a model where we leveraged Cosmos to capture data at the beginning of the process, leverage Cosmos's change feeds to migrate to our transformation into our read formats, again, use the change feed process to trigger all of the enrichments that Debasish went over that allows us to make information from this data, and then store those enrichments in a Cosmos collection for access. And these became the primary points of access for all of the distributed applications that we have. What we learned during this journey is partitioning is key, right? So when we started, we encountered immediately a hot partition. So we've learned that selecting that key is critical to our performance and, more importantly, our cost structure. So making sure that our keys are equally distributed, including every part of a hierarchical key, was one of our key lessons learned. We'll also learn that this partitioning will drive some of your data structures. As you move to a structure from a traditional data model to something compatible with Cosmos, it's going to change the way that you think about structuring your data so that you can leverage the best performance, the best reads and writes from the system. We also had to start thinking beyond the insert, the individual queries, because we learned that we had early investigations where a single RU query investigation prevented us from getting the most value out of the systems. Make sure you do some experiments and don't get laser focused on a single individual query when you're tuning your system. Another large group of lessons we learned were managing the change feed. We started using change feeds specifically to manage eventual consistency. But what we learned was they were incredibly valuable in many different use cases. We've gone through replaying messages to the change feed to account for bug fixes. We've used it to purge data from systems when the partitioning key is challenging for large query sets. And we've even used it to create canary data sets for potential algorithm changes. So it's really think through that, how you can leverage that change feed and the way that Cosmos works to your benefit. We've also learned that scaling the change feed does take some work. So one thing you would need to do is do some investigations. The change feeds scale with the number of physical partitions of your data set. So when you start using change feeds, making sure that you are working through a continuous monitoring process and tuning process for your change feeds. It will not be a set and forget activity. Last is that change feed latency is not a constant. So account for the eventual consistency and make sure your design is ready for those changes. Third is managing our reservations. So when we talk through managing reservations, autoscaling is your friend, right? So we make sure that we have our 10% number is our key go-to metric, meaning that I'm tuning all of my Cosmos collections so that we never dip below 10% of our total maximum threshold. This is so that we can make sure that we never are leaving money on the table by not consuming all of our reservations. We've also encountered error code 429, which is essentially telling you that you are getting throttled. Our initial results or approach to this was immediately scaling up our cluster, which meant that we ended up with an incredibly large RU for not much benefit. When you start encountering 429s, make sure you're doing the investigation and thinking through things like sliding workloads around to cover all of your time period that you can work on it, but it doesn't mean immediately scale your cluster. We've also found great value in logging all of our queries. So when we execute any query or insert against Cosmos, we track the RUs and create a metric against those RUs, which has been invaluable in tracking down partitioning challenges, changes in workload that have changed our nature of the way we want to treat or scale Cosmos, as well as being able to find provisioning misses where we've misprovisioned. So highly recommend thinking about how you would track all of your RU consumptions by query type from this. So in conclusion, thinking about Cosmos being a critical component to us reaching the scale that we have and going further. Since introducing Cosmos in this structure, we've grown our data repository by over 2 times. We've seen no increase in latency of either read or write structure in the system. We have now managing a handful of global instances of Cosmos versus the dozens of customer-specific databases we managed in the past. In addition, we've been able to leverage the schemaless infrastructure to manage through multiple data format changes over the lifecycle of the system. Thank you for joining us with our quick trip through how we're using Cosmos here at Aware. I hope you have a great conference and enjoy your day.
Thank you, everyone. It was a great pleasure telling you about our software.